Hercule Poirot and the Murder in the Moonlit Maze. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Moonlit Manor. The letter arrived on a crisp autumn morning, its cream envelope embossed with a silver crescent moon. Hercule Poirot, seated at his polished mahogany desk in his London flat, regarded it with a raised eyebrow. The address was written in an elegant hand, and the wax seal bore the crest of Ashford, a name that stirred vague recognition in his prodigious memory. With precise movements, he slit the envelope and unfolded the invitation within. Monsieur Hercule Poirot, it began. Your presence is requested at Moonlit Manor, the estate of Lord Reginald Ashford, for a gala on the evening of October 15th. A matter of great import will be revealed. Your discretion and insight would be most valued. Conveyance arranged. RSVP. The signature was a flourish of ink. Lord Reginald Ashford. Poirot's little grey cells hummed. An invitation to a remote manor, promising a revelation, carried the scent of mystery. Discretion and insight, he mused aloud, stroking his immaculate moustache. Mon Dieu! What game does this Lord Ashford play? He accepted, of course. Curiosity, like a cat, would not let him rest. The journey to Moonlit Manor, nestled in the misty hills of Gloucestershire, was undertaken in a sleek Rolls-Royce sent by his host. The driver, a taciturn man named Graves, offered little beyond a nod, his eyes fixed on the winding road. As dusk fell, the manor came into view, its Gothic spires piercing a sky bruised with purple clouds. Ivy clung to its stone facade, and the windows glowed like watchful eyes. Beyond the manor stretched expansive gardens, their centrepiece a sprawling hedge maze, its dark green walls shimmering faintly under the rising moon. Poirot alighted, his patent leather shoes crunching on the gravel drive. The air carried the scent of damp earth and roses, tinged with something indefinable. Anticipation, perhaps. A butler, stiff as a board, greeted him. Monsieur Poirot, welcome. Lord Ashford awaits. The man's voice was clipped, his eyes darting to the maze as if it held secrets he dared not voice. Inside, the manor's grandeur was undeniable. Chandeliers cast prisms of light across oak-panelled walls, and a grand staircase swept upward like a promise of secrets. Poirot was ushered into the drawing-room, where the other guests mingled, their laughter brittle as glass. Lord Reginald Ashford, a wiry man in his 60s with sharp blue eyes and a hawkish nose, approached with a smile that did not reach his gaze. Monsieur Poirot, an honour, he exclaimed, shaking Poirot's hand with vigour. Your reputation precedes you. I trust the journey was pleasant. Most adequate, Poirot replied, his tone polite but probing. This gala, monsieur, it intrigues me. What is this matter of great import? Ashford chuckled, waving a hand. All in good time, my dear detective. Tonight we celebrate. Meet my guests. They are a fascinating lot. Poirot's eyes swept the room, cataloguing each face with the precision of a watchmaker. There was Lady Beatrice Ashford, Lord Reginald's younger sister, her auburn hair piled high, her smile tight as she clutched a glass of sherry. Beside her stood Dr. Mortimer Crane, a botanist with a distracted air, his fingers stained green as if he'd been pruning the maze himself. Miss Clara Vane, a painter with kohl-rimmed eyes, radiated bohemian charm, though her glances toward Ashford were sharp. Captain Lionel Hurst, a retired military man, puffed on a cigar, his posture rigid, while his wife Eleanor fidgeted with her pearl necklace, her eyes flitting nervously. Lastly, Mr. Julian Trent, a financier with slick hair and a calculating gaze, spoke in low tones to a young woman introduced as Miss Sophie Dale, Ashford's ward, whose pale face betrayed unease. The group was eclectic, yet Poirot sensed a thread of connection, an unspoken tension weaving them together. His little grey cells noted the way Lady Beatrice avoided Trent's gaze, how Crane's hands trembled slightly, and how Sophie's smile faltered when Ashford mentioned the maze. This manor, Poirot thought, it is a stage, and these players conceal their scripts. Dinner was a lavish affair. Roasted pheasant, crystal goblets of claret, and a dessert of moon-shaped pastries that delighted Poirot's penchant for symmetry. Conversation danced around trivialities, art, politics, the weather. But Poirot listened for what was unsaid. Ashford spoke of the maze, a family legacy designed by an ancestor obsessed with puzzles. It's said to hold secrets, he remarked, his eyes gleaming. Perhaps tonight we shall uncover one. As coffee was served, Ashford rose, tapping his glass. "My friends," he began, "tonight is no ordinary gathering. I have an announcement that will change everything." He paused, savouring the room's attention. "But first, a diversion. The maze is open to explore under the moonlight. Who dares to brave its paths?" the guests murmured, some excited, others hesitant. Poirot declined, preferring to observe from the terrace. As the group dispersed toward the maze, their silhouettes swallowed by its shadowy entrance, he lit a cigarette and studied the scene. The moon hung low, casting silver light that danced on the hedges, creating illusions of movement. A chill breeze carried a faint sound, a rustle, a whisper, or perhaps nothing at all. Poirot's reverie was broken by a footman's urgent whisper. "Monsieur, Lord Ashford requests you in the library. It's urgent." Poirot's heart quickened. He extinguished his cigarette and followed, his polished shoes silent on the marble floor. The library was dim, lined with ancient tomes, and Ashford stood by a desk, his face pale. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, voice low, "I must confide in you. There is a matter." His words were cut short by a scream, shrill and piercing, from the direction of the maze. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the drama begins." Without hesitation, he strode toward the terrace, the guests' voices rising in panic. The moonlit maze, so enchanting moments ago, now loomed like a trap. Poirot's mind raced, already assembling the pieces of a puzzle he had yet to fully see. Someone, somewhere in that labyrinth, had played their first move. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Maze. The scream shattered the night's fragile calm, echoing from the depths of the moonlit maze. Hercule Poirot, standing on the terrace of Moonlit Manor, froze, his keen eyes narrowing as he pinpointed its origin. The guests, scattered moments ago into the labyrinth's twisting paths, erupted in chaos. Shouts, hurried footsteps, and the rustle of leaves. Poirot's little grey cells sparked into action. "A scream of such intensity," he murmured. "It is not the cry of mere surprise. Non, it is terror, or worse." He moved swiftly, his polished shoes crunching gravel as he descended toward the maze's entrance. A towering arch of yew hedges bathed in silver moonlight. The butler, Mr. Grayson, appeared at his side, his face ashen. "Monsieur Poirot, it came from the centre, I'm sure of it," he stammered, wringing his hands. "Then we must hasten," Poirot replied, his voice calm but commanding. "Fetch Torches, Monsieur Grayson, and summon the others. Vite, vite! The butler nodded and scurried off, leaving Poirot to face the maze alone for a moment. Its dark corridors stretched before him, the moonlight casting shadows that danced like spectres. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and something sharper, fear perhaps. As Poirot entered the maze, the hedges loomed high, their dense foliage swallowing sound. The paths twisted unpredictably, and the moonlight played tricks, creating false openings and illusory walls. He proceeded methodically, his mind mapping each turn. Voices grew louder ahead, guiding him. Rounding a corner, he emerged into the maze's heart, a circular clearing with a marble fountain at its centre, its waters glinting under the moon. There, sprawled on the grass, lay a body. Poirot's breath caught as he recognised the figure. Miss Sophie Dale, Lord Ashford's ward, her pale face frozen in a mask of horror, her silk gown stained crimson. A jagged wound marred her throat, and her eyes stared blankly at the starless sky. The guests surrounded her, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Lady Beatrice clutched her brother's arm, her lips trembling. Dr. Crane knelt beside the body, muttering about pulse points, while Captain Hurst barked orders to no one in particular. Clara Vane stood apart, her kohl-rimmed eyes wide, and Julian Trent's face was unreadable, his hands thrust deep into his pockets. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered, stepping forward. Do not touch her, mes amis. The scene, it must remain undisturbed. His voice cut through the murmurs, authoritative yet composed. He knelt beside Sophie, his gloved hands hovering over her, noting the angle of the wound, the blood pooling beneath, and a single pearl earring glinting in the grass, its twin missing. The fountain's gentle trickle mocked the grim silence. Tut! Ashford pushed through the crowd, his face drained of colour. "Sophie!" he gasped, staggering. "Who could do this?" His eyes darted to the guests, searching, accusing. "That, monsieur," Poirot said, rising, "is what we shall discover." He turned to the group. "Who found her? Speak, s'il vous plaît." Clara Vane stepped forward, her voice unsteady. "I did. I was lost in the maze, trying to find the centre. I heard a rustle, then I saw her." She shuddered, wrapping her shawl tighter. Poirot noted her dishevelled appearance, a twig caught in her hair and the faint tremor in her hands. "And you, mademoiselle, were alone?" he asked, his gaze piercing. "Yes," she replied quickly, too quickly. Poirot's moustache twitched, but he said nothing, filing the observation away. At that moment, Grayson returned with torches and a local policeman, Constable Harris, a stout man with a sceptical frown. "What's this, then?" Harris demanded, eyeing Poirot with suspicion. "You're that detective, aren't you? This is my jurisdiction." Poirot bowed slightly. "Hercule Poirot, at your service. I offer my assistance, Constable. A murder in such a place requires finesse." Harris grunted but nodded, clearly out of his depth. "Right. No one leaves this clearing until I say so. You lot, back up." Poirot ignored the order, his attention on the scene. The mazes! Walls enclosed them like a trap, the moonlight casting long shadows that seemed to shift with purpose. He circled the body, noting a scuff mark in the grass, a faint smear of mud on the fountain's edge, and a scrap of fabric caught on a nearby hedge, blue like Clara's shawl, but too small to be certain. "Curieux," he murmured, his mind racing. "Constable," he said, We must preserve these traces, the grass, the mud, the fabric. They speak, if one listens. Harris blinked, uncomprehending, but instructed a deputy to mark the area. Poirot turned to the guests, his voice steady. "Tell me, who was with whom in the maze? Your movements, they are most important." A cacophony of answers followed. Lady Beatrice claimed she was with her brother, though Ashford hesitated before confirming. Dr. Crane said he was studying the maze's flora, alone. Captain Hurst and his wife insisted they were together, yet Eleanor's nervous fidgeting suggested otherwise. Trent, cool and composed, said he'd lingered at the entrance, admiring the view. Poirot's eyes lingered on each, sensing half-truths. The constable began herding the guests toward the manor, but Poirot lingered, his gaze fixed on the maze's dark paths. The killer, he thought, knew this labyrinth well. To strike and vanish under the moon's deceptive light, c'est formidable. He glanced at Sophie's lifeless form, her single earring glinting like a clue left deliberately. "Mademoiselle Dale," he whispered, "what secret did you carry to your grave?" As the group retreated, Poirot followed, his mind a whirl of questions. The maze, with its shadows and secrets, held the key. He would unravel it, step by meticulous step, for Hercule Poirot never failed to find the truth. Chapter 3. The Enigmatic Victim. The drawing-room of Moonlit Manor was a cocoon of sombre warmth, its chandeliers dimmed to a soft glow, as if mourning. The tragedy in the maze. Hercule Poirot stood by the fireplace, its crackling flames casting flickering shadows across his immaculate suit. The guests, gathered under Constable Harris's watchful eye, sat in uneasy silence, their faces a tapestry of grief, fear, and suspicion. Sophie Dale's murder had transformed the gala into a grim tableau, and Poirot, with his little grey cells in full motion, was determined to unravel the enigma of the victim. "Mademoiselle Sophie Dale," Poirot began, his voice precise yet resonant. "She was not merely a guest, non? She was Lord Ashford's ward, a young woman of mystery. Who was she truly? This, mes amis, is where we begin." Lord Ashford, seated in a high-backed chair, looked haggard, his earlier charisma drained. "Sophie came to us 5 years ago," he said, his voice heavy. "An orphan, the daughter of a distant cousin. I took her in out of duty. She was quiet, reserved, but charming." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Duty, monsieur? A noble sentiment. Yet I sense there is more. Tell me, what was her role here?" Ashford hesitated, his eyes flicking to Lady Beatrice, who sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly. "She assisted with household matters," he said, "correspondence, planning events. She was indispensable." "Indispensable," Poirot repeated, his tone probing. He turned to the others. "And you, mesdames et messieurs, what did you know of Mademoiselle Dale? Speak freely, for the truth, it hides in the smallest details." Lady Beatrice cleared her throat, her voice sharp. Sophie was polite but distant. She kept to herself, always scribbling in that journal of hers. Her eyes narrowed. "I thought her secretive, if you must know." Poirot noted the edge in her tone, filing it away. He turned to Dr. Mortimer Crane, who fidgeted with a pocket watch, his green stained, fingers betraying his nerves. "And you, Doctor, you who study the flora of this estate, did you observe Mademoiselle Dale in the gardens, perhaps?" Crane blinked, startled. "I saw her in the maze once or twice, sketching the hedges. She asked about rare plants, but I didn't think much of it. She seemed curious, nothing more. Curieux indeed, Poirot murmured, his gaze shifting to Clara Vane. The painter stood by a window, her shawl draped loosely, her eyes haunted. Mademoiselle Vane, you found the body. Did you know Mademoiselle Dale well? Clara's lips parted, then closed. Not well, she said finally. We spoke occasionally, about art mostly. She admired my work, said it captured the Manor's spirit. Her voice wavered, and Poirot noted a faint flush on her cheeks. Captain Lionel Hurst, his cigar extinguished, snorted. She was a quiet girl, kept out of trouble, not like some. He glanced at Julian Trent, who leaned against a bookcase, his expression cool. Trouble, Capitaine? Poirot asked, his eyes gleaming. You imply Mademoiselle Dale was entangled in something unsavoury. Hurst shifted uncomfortably. Didn't say that. Just meant she was unremarkable. Didn't stand out. His wife, Eleanor, twisted, her pearl necklace, her voice barely audible. She was kind to me. Once she helped me find a lost brooch in the garden. She didn't deserve this. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was relentless. Merci, madame. And you, Monsieur Trent, a financier. Did Mademoiselle Dale seek your expertise? Trent's smile was thin. She asked about investments once, but I brushed her off. I deal in millions, Monsieur Poirot, not pocket change. The room bristled at his arrogance, but Poirot merely nodded, his mind cataloguing every word. He paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug. Mademoiselle Dale, she was young, yet she stirred something in this house. A journal, a curiosity about plants, an interest in art and finance, and a death in the maze. Most intriguing. He paused, addressing the butler, Mr. Grayson, who hovered near the door. Monsieur Grayson, you have served this household long. What can you tell me of Mademoiselle Dale's habits? Grayson's eyes darted to Ashford, then back to Poirot. She was diligent, sir. Often walked the maze at dusk, alone. Said it helped her think. Once I overheard her arguing with someone near the library. Couldn't hear the words, but she sounded upset. An argument, Poirot repeated, his voice low. With whom, monsieur? I couldn't see, Grayson admitted. It was dark, and I didn't wish to intrude. Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting the guests' reactions. Lady Beatrice's tightened lips, Crane's sudden interest in his shoes, Clara's averted eyes. The air grew heavy, the fire's warmth unable to dispel the chill of suspicion. Stepping to a side table, Poirot examined a photograph of Sophie, her delicate features framed by dark curls, her eyes holding a quiet intensity. Beside it lay a guest book, its pages filled with signatures from past events. Poirot's fingers traced a faint smudge of ink, as if someone had written and erased a name. Curieux, he murmured, his mind turning to the pearl earring, the mud smear, and the scrap of fabric from the maze. Were they Sophie's or the killer's? Constable Harris, stationed by the door, cleared his throat. Monsieur Poirot, I've sent for the coroner. We'll need statements from everyone. No one leaves the manor. Bien, Poirot agreed, though his focus remained on the guests. The maze, it is a puzzle, but so too is Mademoiselle Dale. Her life, her secrets, they are the key to her death. As the guests dispersed to their rooms under Harris's orders, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the window overlooking the maze. Its hedges loomed in the moonlight, whispering secrets only the dead might know. Sophie Dale, he sensed, was no mere victim. Her presence in the manor, her quiet inquiries, had stirred a hornet's nest. But whose sting had proved fatal? He resolved to visit Sophie's room at first light, to search for her journal and any trace of her final days. The truth, Poirot knew, lay in the details, the ones others overlooked. With a final glance at the maze, he murmured, "Mademoiselle, you will speak to Hercule Poirot, even from beyond the grave." Chapter 4. Whispers of the Past. The morning after Sophie Dale's murder dawned grey and heavy, the mist clinging to Moonlit Manor like a shroud. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood in the library, its towering shelves laden with centuries of secrets. The room smelled of old leather and wax, and a faint draught stirred the curtains, as if the manor itself were whispering. Poirot's little grey cells were restless, piecing together the puzzle of Sophie's death. Her journal, her curiosity about the maze, and the overheard argument hinted at a deeper truth, one rooted, perhaps, in the manor's shadowed past. Poirot had requested access to the manor's archives, and Lord Ashford, though reluctant, had complied. "You'll find little of interest, Monsieur Poirot," he had said, his voice strained. "Just dusty records of my ancestors' eccentricities." But Poirot, with his unerring instinct, sensed otherwise. The maze, with its moonlit illusions, and Sophie's lifeless body at its heart, was no mere backdrop. It was a character in this drama. He began with a leather-bound volume, its pages brittle with age, titled Chronicles of Moonlit Manor. The book detailed the estate's history, beginning with Sir Edmund Ashford, who built the maze in 1742. "A man obsessed with riddles," the text described. Sir Edmund designed the labyrinth to guard a secret known only to the family. Poirot's moustache twitched. "A secret, toujours," he murmured, "and secrets, they breed motives." The chronicle recounted how Sir Edmund vanished within the maze one moonlit night, his fate unknown. Subsequent generations whispered of a curse, claiming the maze demanded a price for its mysteries. Poirot, dismissive of superstition, noted a recurring motif, a crescent moon etched into the manor's crest and mentioned in cryptic passages. "The moon," he mused, "it lights the truth, yet casts shadows of deceit." He turned to a stack of letters, their ink faded but legible. One, dated 1803, from a Lady Margaret Ashford, spoke of the maze's hidden heart, and a treasure guarded by thorns. Another, from 1876, warned of those who seek the maze's truth, for they court danger. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Sophie's walks in the maze, her sketches, her questions about plants. Had she been chasing this same truth? The library door creaked open, and Mr. Grayson, the butler, entered with a tray of tea. His hands trembled slightly, betraying nerves. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, "I thought you might need refreshment." "Merci, Monsieur Grayson," Poirot replied, his gaze piercing. "You have served the Ashfords long, oui? Tell me, what tales does this manor whisper of its maze?" Grayson hesitated, setting the tray down. "Old stories, sir. The staff say the maze is alive in a way. They claim it shifts under the moonlight, trapping those who pry too deeply. Miss Sophie, she was fascinated by it, always asking about Sir Edmund, about hidden paths." Poirot leaned forward. "And you, monsieur, did you share these tales with her?" "Only what I know," Grayson said quickly. "I told her the maze was no place for a young lady at night, but she insisted. on her walks, even after dark. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the butler's unease. And these stories, they speak of a treasure, perhaps. Or a secret. Grayson's eyes flickered. Just legends, sir. No one's found anything in centuries. He excused himself, leaving Poirot to ponder. The detective crossed to a window overlooking the maze. Its hedges, shrouded in mist, seemed to pulse with secrets. Sophie's death, he sensed, was no random act of violence. The pearl earring, the mud smear, the scrap of fabric from the maze, they were threads in a tapestry woven long ago. Had Sophie uncovered something the killer wished to keep buried? He returned to the archives, uncovering a faded map of the maze, its lines intricate and bewildering. A small notation in the corner read, "Follow the moon's path to the heart." Poirot traced the paths with a gloved finger, noting a peculiar intersection near the fountain where Sophie was found. "C'est intéressant," he murmured. The map, though old, suggested a deliberate design, one that might conceal more than hedges. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Lady Beatrice entered, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her expression guarded. "Monsieur Poirot, I heard you were here. Digging into our family's past, are you?" "Mais oui, madame," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "The past, it often holds the key to the present. Tell me, what did Mademoiselle Dale know of your ancestor, Sir Edmund?" Lady Beatrice's lips thinned. Sophie was curious, always poking into things that didn't concern her. She asked about the maze, about old stories. I told her they were nonsense, ghost tales to amuse children. "And yet," Poirot said, his voice soft but sharp, "she died in that maze. A coincidence, perhaps?" Her eyes flashed. "You're suggesting I had something to do with it. I loved Sophie like a daughter." Poirot raised a hand. "I suggest nothing, madam. I observe, and I observe that this manor, this maze, they guard secrets you may not fully know." Lady Beatrice turned away, her hands trembling. "You're wasting your time with old books, monsieur. The killer is among us, not in the past. Perhaps," Poirot said, his gaze returning to the map. "But the past, it has a way of reaching into the present." As she left, Poirot's mind raced. The maze's history, Sophie's inquiries, the crescent moon motif, they were connected. He resolved to examine Sophie's room next, hoping her journal might reveal what she had uncovered. The manor's whispers were growing louder, and Poirot, with his unyielding logic, would listen until they spoke the truth. Chapter 5. The Alibi Puzzle. The afternoon light filtered weakly through the leaded windows of Moonlit Manor's dining hall, casting a pall over the assembled guests. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the long mahogany table, his posture erect, his moustache impeccably groomed despite the grim task at hand. The murder of Sophie Dale in the Moonlit Maze had cast a net of suspicion over the household, and Poirot, with his little grey cells in relentless motion, was determined to untangle the web of alibis spun by the guests. Each claim, he knew, was a piece of the puzzle, some true, some false, all revealing. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. "The night of Mademoiselle Dale's death, you were all in or near the maze. Your movements, they are critical. I ask you now to recount your actions precisely. The truth, it hides in the details." Lord Ashford, his face etched with fatigue, spoke first. "Beatrice and I were together, near the maze's entrance. We'd barely entered when we heard the scream." His voice faltered, and he glanced at his sister for confirmation. Lady Beatrice nodded, her auburn hair catching the light. Yes, we were discussing the gala. We never went deep into the maze. Her tone was firm, but Poirot noted her fingers, tightening around her handkerchief. Curieux, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. And yet, madame, your shoes this morning bore traces of mud. Fresh mud as from the maze's paths. Lady Beatrice flushed. I stepped into the garden earlier today. It means nothing. Poirot inclined his head, letting the moment pass, and turned to Dr. Mortimer Crane, whose green-stained fingers fidgeted with a napkin. Doctor, you claim to be studying the maze's flora, alone. Yet Mademoiselle Dale, she too was curious about plants. Did you encounter her? Crane's eyes darted away. No, I was in a side path, examining a rare U variant. I heard the scream and ran to the centre. His voice was unsteady, and Poirot noted a faint tremor in his hands. And you, Mademoiselle Vane? Poirot's gaze fixed on Clara, the painter, who stood by a window, her shawl draped loosely. You found the body. Where were you before? Clara's kohl-rimmed eyes met his briefly. I was lost in the maze, wandering. I told you, I heard a rustle, then found Sophie. Her voice cracked, and Poirot observed a faint tear in her sleeve, unnoticed before. A rustle, Poirot repeated. From where, mademoiselle? The hedges or a person? I couldn't tell, Clara admitted, her hands twisting. It was dark, the moonlight confusing. Poirot's attention shifted to Captain Lionel Hurst, whose military bearing seemed strained. Capitaine, you and Madame Hurst were together. We? Hurst nodded curtly. We were near the fountain, exploring. Eleanor got turned around, so we stayed close. Didn't see Sophie until the scream. Eleanor Hurst, her pearl necklace, glinting, nodded faintly. It's true. The maze, it's disorienting. Her voice was barely audible, and Poirot noted her eyes avoiding her husband's. Lastly, he turned to Julian Trent, the financier, who leaned against the wall, his expression cool. Monsieur Trent, you lingered at the maze's entrance, admiring the view. A curious choice, non, when all were invited to explore. Trent's smile was thin. I'm not one for games, Monsieur Poirot. I stayed back, smoked a cigarette, saw nothing, heard nothing until the scream. Poirot's moustache twitched. And yet, monsieur, your cigarette case, it is silver, oui? A similar glint was seen near the maze's edge that night. Trent's eyes flickered, but he shrugged. Plenty of things glint in the moonlight. The room grew tense, the guests exchanging wary glances. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the polished floor. The alibis, they are like pieces of a mosaic. Some fit, some do not. Let us consider the evidence. He paused, producing a small evidence bag from his pocket, containing the scrap of blue fabric from the maze. This, found near the fountain. It resembles Mademoiselle Vane's shawl, yet she claims to have wandered alone. Clara paled. It's not mine. I tore my sleeve, yes, but not that fabric. Poirot raised a hand. Calm, mademoiselle. We seek only clarity. He turned to the group. There is also the mud smear on the fountain, the missing pearl earring, and a scuff mark in the grass. These, they tell a story. But whose? Constable Harris, stationed by the door, coughed. Monsieur Poirot, we've searched the maze again, found this. He held up a single glove, leather, stained with mud. It was tucked under a hedge near the body. Poirot examined it, noting its fine craftsmanship and a faint monogram. L.H. Capitaine Hurst, perhaps this is yours? He asked, his tone deceptively mild. Hurst bristled. I lost a glove days ago. Anyone could have picked it up." "Indeed," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The maze, it is a place of lost things and found truths." He addressed the group. "Your alibis, they conflict. Timelines overlap, yet no one admits to seeing Mademoiselle Dale alive in the maze. Someone lies or someone forgets. Hercule Poirot does not forget." The guests shifted uncomfortably, the air thick with suspicion. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the clues. Sophie's journal, her argument overheard by Grayson, the crescent moon motif from the manor's history. Had she stumbled upon a secret worth killing for? The glove, the fabric, the mud. They pointed to someone familiar with the maze's twists. As the meeting adjourned, Poirot lingered, his gaze on the window overlooking the maze. Its hedges, now grey in the daylight, seemed to mock his efforts. "The truth," he murmured. "It is there, in the shadows of the moon. I shall find it." Chapter 6. Moonlight's Deception. The moon hung low over Moonlit Manor, its silver light weaving a tapestry of shadows across the maze's towering hedges. Hercule Poirot stood at the labyrinth's entrance, his breath visible in the chill night air, his eyes gleaming with purpose. The murder of Sophie Dale, found lifeless at the maze's heart, had set his little grey cells ablaze, and the inconsistencies in the guests' alibis, muddy shoes, a torn sleeve, a monogrammed glove, demanded answers. The maze, Poirot sensed, held the key, its paths twisted not only by design, but by the moonlight's deceptive play. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, adjusting his scarf. "This labyrinth, it is a mirror of the mind, full of illusions. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through such tricks." With a torch in hand, he stepped into the maze, its yew walls closing around him like a silent conspiracy. The paths twisted sharply, the moonlight casting false openings and shifting shadows that seemed to move with intent. Poirot moved deliberately, his polished shoes silent on the damp earth, mapping each turn in his mind. The fountain, where Sophie's body was found, was his destination, but he paused often, noting how the light distorted distances and angles. A hedge appeared solid, then revealed a hidden path. A corner seemed a dead end, yet opened under scrutiny. The moonlight, he thought, it is both guide and deceiver. He reached the maze's centre, the marble fountain gleaming under the moon's gaze. The grass still bore the faint outline of Sophie's form, marked by Constable Harris's team. Poirot knelt, his torch sweeping the ground. The scuff mark, the mud smear, the scrap of blue fabric. They were clues, but incomplete. He examined the fountain's edge, where the mud smear had caught his eye. It was smudged, as if someone had leaned against it, perhaps in haste. Nearby, a faint indentation in the grass suggested a dropped object, hastily retrieved. "Curieux," he whispered, his mind turning to the missing pearl earring. A sudden rustle broke his reverie, sharp and close. Poirot froze, his torch extinguished to avoid detection. The sound came again, from a path to his left, a soft crunch, as of footsteps, on leaves. He waited, his senses alert, until a figure stumbled into the clearing. It was Dr. Mortimer Crane, his face pale, his green-stained hands clutching a small notebook. "Dr. Crane," Poirot said, stepping forward, his voice calm but firm. "You wander the maze at such an hour. Why? Crane gasped, nearly dropping his notebook. Monsieur Poirot, I couldn't sleep. I was studying the maze's plants, their nocturnal patterns. His eyes darted to the fountain, then away. Poirot's moustache twitched. At midnight, Doctor. With a notebook, yet no torch. Most unusual. He gestured to the clearing. This is where Mademoiselle Dale died. Does your study bring you here by chance? Crane stammered. I meant no harm. I thought I'd find answers about the U's properties. But his hands trembled, and Poirot noted a leaf caught in his cuff, fresh from the maze's depths. Before Poirot could press further, a cry rang out. Not a scream, but a choked gasp from deeper in the maze. He whirled, torch reignited, and sprinted toward the sound, Crane trailing reluctantly. The paths twisted maddeningly, but Poirot's memory guided him to a narrow alcove, where Clara Vane lay slumped against a hedge, her shawl torn, a thin trickle of blood on her temple. Mademoiselle! Poirot knelt, checking her pulse. She was alive, her breathing shallow. Doctor, assist me! Crane, flustered, helped lift Clara to a sitting position. Her eyes fluttered open, wild with fear. Someone attacked me, she whispered. A shadow. In the maze. I didn't see their face. She clutched Poirot's arm, her voice trembling. They meant to kill me. Poirot's mind raced. A second attack, so soon after Sophie's murder, suggested a killer still active, desperate to silence another. He examined Clara's wound, superficial, likely from a blunt object. Near her feet lay a crumpled note, half buried in the grass. Poirot retrieved it, unfolding it carefully. In scrawled ink it read, "The moon sees all. Stop searching, mon Dieu." Poirot murmured, pocketing the note. This maze, it guards its secrets fiercely. He turned to Crane. Doctor, you were near. Did you see anyone? Crane shook his head, too quickly. No, nothing. I was distracted. Poirot's eyes narrowed, but he focused on Clara. Mademoiselle, you must rest. We return to the manor. With Crane's help, he guided her back, the maze's shadows seeming to watch their every step. In the manor's drawing room, Constable Harris was summoned, his face grim as Poirot recounted the incident. Clara, bandaged and shaken, repeated her story, but her eyes avoided Crane's. The other guests, roused from sleep, gathered in disarray. Lord Ashford pale, Lady Beatrice clutching her robe, Captain Hurst muttering about security, Eleanor twisting her necklace, and Julian Trent coolly observant. The killer remains among us, Poirot declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs. This note, it is a warning. But Hercule Poirot, he does not heed threats. The maze, it deceives, but I shall unravel its truth. As Harris escorted Clara to her room, Poirot lingered, his mind on the note's scrawl, the leaf in Crane's cuff, and the maze's illusions. The moonlight had betrayed Sophie, and now Clara. But it would not betray Hercule Poirot. Chapter 7. The Hidden Passage. The mist hung low over Moonlit Manor, shrouding the maze in a ghostly veil, as Hercule Poirot ventured into its labyrinthine paths once more. The events of the previous night, Clara Vane's attack and the cryptic note warning the moon sees all, stop searching, had intensified his resolve. Sophie Dale's murder, the muddied alibis, and the maze's deceptive moonlight suggested A deeper secret, one Poirot's little grey cells were determined to unearth. The maze, he suspected, was more than a garden. It was a vault of truths locked by history. Clad in a heavy overcoat against the morning chill, Poirot carried a torch and the faded map from the Manor's archives, its lines etched with Sir Edmund Ashford's cryptic design. The notation, "Follow the moon's path to the heart," gnawed at him, hinting at a hidden feature. He navigated the maze with precision, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth, his eyes scanning for anomalies in the hedges. Near the fountain, where Sophie's body had been found, he paused, recalling the scuff mark, the mud smear, and the scrap of blue fabric. The fountain's marble gleamed dully, its base moss-covered and uneven. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the stone, searching for irregularities. A faint seam, nearly invisible, caught his attention, a slab slightly misaligned. He pressed it, and with a low grind, a section of the base slid aside, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his heart quickening. A hidden passage concealed for centuries. He hesitated only a moment before descending, his torch casting a feeble glow on damp walls. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of earth and decay. The staircase ended in a small chamber, its walls lined with ancient stone, etched with crescent moon symbols that mirrored the Manor's crest. In the centre stood a wooden table, its surface scarred and dusty, holding a collection of relics. A tarnished silver medallion engraved with a maze, a bundle of yellowed letters tied with twine, and a small locked box. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "C'est magnifique," he whispered. A secret guarded by the maze? He examined the letters first, their ink faded but legible. Dated 1743, they spoke of a Brotherhood of the Crescent, a secret society founded by Sir Edmund Ashford to protect a treasure of the mind and soul. The letters hinted at rituals conducted in the maze, guided by moonlight, and a vow to guard their secret at all costs. One passage chilled Poirot. "Those who betray the Crescent shall meet the maze's judgment." Had Sophie stumbled upon this Brotherhood's legacy? The medallion bore an inscription, "Lunam secer," follow the moon. Poirot pocketed it, his mind racing. The locked box resisted his efforts, its key absent, but its weight suggested something metallic within. He scanned the chamber for further clues, noting faint footprints in the dust, recent and not his own. Someone else, he thought, has visited this place. A noise above, a rustle of leaves, startled him. He extinguished his torch and ascended swiftly, emerging to find Mr. Grayson, the butler, standing near the fountain, his face pale. "Monsieur Poirot," Grayson exclaimed, stepping back. I saw you enter the maze and worried for your safety." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your concern, monsieur, it is touching. Yet you linger near the very spot I investigate. Why?" Grayson's hands twisted. "I was checking the grounds, sir. After Miss Vane's attack, I thought—" "Thought what?" Poirot pressed, his voice sharp. "That the maze holds more than hedges. You spoke of its legends of Sir Edmund. Did you know of this passage?" Grayson's eyes widened. "Passage? No, sir, I swear it." But his voice trembled, and Poirot noted a faint smudge of dust on his cuff, as if he'd brushed against something ancient. "Very well," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. But the maze, it speaks, Monsieur Grayson, and Hercule Poirot listens. Returning to the manor, Poirot sought out Constable Harris in the drawing-room, where the guests were confined under watch. He shared his discovery, omitting the medallion for now. Harris, sceptical, dispatched a deputy to guard the passage. "A secret chamber," he grunted. "Sounds like more of your fancy theories, Poirot." "Not theories, Constable." Poirot replied, "Facts. The maze hides a history, and Mademoiselle Dale, she sought it. Perhaps Mademoiselle Vane did too." He turned to Clara, who sat pale and bandaged, her eyes wary. "Mademoiselle, your attack, was it near this fountain? Did you see this passage?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know. It was dark, chaotic. I only saw a shadow." But her fingers clutched her shawl, and Poirot sensed she withheld something. Lord Ashford, overhearing, looked stricken. "A passage? In my maze? I knew nothing of this." His voice rang with sincerity, but Poirot noted Lady Beatrice's sudden stillness, her eyes fixed on her brother. "Perhaps, monsieur," Poirot said, "your ancestors kept secrets even from you." He addressed the group. "The Brotherhood of the Crescent. Does this name mean anything to you?" Silence greeted him, but Poirot saw flickers of unease. Dr. Crane's tightened grip on his notebook, Captain Hurst's scowl, Julian Trent's cool stare. The chamber, the medallion, the letters. They pointed to a motive rooted in the past, one Sophie had uncovered and paid for with her life. As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his mind on the locked box and the footprints in. The dust, the maze's secrets were unravelling, but the killer remained a shadow, moving unseen. "The moonlight," he murmured, gazing out at the labyrinth. "It hides as much as it reveals. But I shall find you, mon ami." Chapter 8. Motives in the Mirror. The grand hall of Moonlit Manor gleamed under the flickering light of its chandeliers, but the air was heavy with suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood before a towering gilt-framed mirror, its surface reflecting the assembled guests like distorted players in a grim drama. The murder of Sophie Dale, the attack on Clara Vane, and the discovery of the maze's hidden chamber had tightened the net around the household. Poirot, his little grey cells alight, had orchestrated this gathering to stir the pot of secrets, knowing that truth often surfaced in moments of discomfort. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice resonant, "the maze has revealed its secrets. A hidden passage, a brotherhood of the crescent, a history of vows and betrayals. Mademoiselle Dale sought these truths, and it cost her life. Mademoiselle Vane, too, was warned to stop searching. Someone among you knows why." The guests shifted uneasily. Lord Ashford, his face haggard, gripped the arm of his chair. Lady Beatrice, beside him, stared into the mirror, her reflection pale. Dr. Mortimer Crane clutched his notebook, his green-stained fingers restless. Clara Vane, her temple bandaged, sat rigid, her eyes darting. Captain Lionel Hurst stood stiffly, his wife Eleanor twisting her pearl necklace, while Julian Trent leaned against a column, his cool demeanour unshaken. Poirot paced, his polished shoes clicking on the marble floor. "Let us consider motives," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. Mademoiselle Dale was curious about the maze, the manor's past, perhaps a treasure. Did she threaten someone's fortune? He paused. Before Julian Trent. Monsieur Trent, you deal in wealth. Did Sophie's inquiries touch your interests? Trent's smile was razor-thin. She asked about investments, as I told you. I had no reason to harm her. My affairs are secure. But his fingers brushed his cigarette case, and Poirot noted the faint glint of silver, recalling the flash near the maze. Secure, perhaps, Poirot said, turning to Lady Beatrice. Madam, you called Sophie secretive. Did her secrecy threaten the Ashford legacy? A legacy tied to the Brotherhood, perhaps? Lady Beatrice's eyes flashed. How dare you? Sophie was family, not a threat. I knew nothing of this. Brotherhood nonsense. Yet her hands trembled, and the mirror reflected a flicker of fear. Poirot moved to Dr. Crane. Doctor, your fascination with the maze's flora coincided with Sophie's. Did she discover something in your notes? Something worth killing for? Crane's face reddened. My research is academic. Sophie asked about plants, nothing more. I'm no murderer. But his grip on his notebook tightened, and Poirot's eyes lingered on the leaf caught in his cuff from the maze. Clara Vane spoke unprompted, her voice shaky. I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I barely knew Sophie. I was attacked too. Doesn't that prove I'm innocent? Her shawl slipped, revealing the torn sleeve, and the mirror caught her haunted expression. Proof, mademoiselle, Poirot said softly. The note. The moon sees all, suggests you saw too much. Or perhaps you know more than you say. Captain, Hurst snorted. This is absurd. You're accusing us all, Poirot. Eleanor and I were together, nowhere near Sophie. Eleanor nodded faintly, but her eyes avoided the mirror as if it might betray her. Poirot stopped before the mirror, his reflection sharp against the distorted faces behind him. The mirror, it shows us as we are, and as we wish to hide. Let us speak of Sophie's journal. Monsieur Grayson overheard her arguing, perhaps about its contents. Where is it now? The butler, standing by the door, stiffened. I don't know, sir. I only heard raised voices, nothing clear. But his eyes darted to Lord Ashford, and Poirot noted the dust on his cuff from the hidden chamber. Poirot produced the medallion from the passage, its crescent moon glinting. This, he said, holding it aloft, was found in the maze's secret chamber. It speaks of a brotherhood, of vows. Did Sophie uncover a betrayal within this circle? Silence fell, heavy as the mist outside. Then Eleanor Hurst gasped, her necklace snapping, pearls scattering across the floor. I saw Sophie with that medallion once, she stammered. She said it was a keepsake, nothing more. The room erupted in murmurs. Hurst glared at his wife. Why didn't you mention this before? Lady Beatrice's face tightened, and Trent's cool mask slipped for a moment. Poirot raised a hand. Calm, mes amis. The medallion. It is a clue, but not the whole truth. The journal, the argument, the chamber. They point to a motive rooted in secrets. Someone here fears exposure. As Constable Harris entered, reporting no sign of Sophie's journal in her room, Poirot's mind raced. The pearls on the floor reminded him of Sophie's missing earring, the mud smear, the blue fabric. The note from Clara's attack echoed in his thoughts. Stop searching. But Poirot would not stop. He addressed the group. The mirror reflects your faces, but your hearts they hide. Hercule Poirot sees through such disguises. Return to your rooms, but know this, the truth it approaches. As the guests dispersed, their reflections fading in the mirror, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the scattered pearls. The manor's secrets, like the maze's paths, were twisting, but he was closing in. The Brotherhood, the medallion, Sophie's journal, they were pieces of a puzzle he would soon complete. Chapter 9. The Gardener's Tale, the Gardens of Moonlit Manor, bathed in the pale light of a late afternoon, stretched like a canvas of secrets, their centrepiece the maze that had claimed Sophie Dale's life. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the autumn chill, sought out the manor's reclusive gardener, Mr. Ezra Finch, whose name had surfaced in whispers among the staff. Finch, a wiry man with weathered hands and eyes like the maze's, shadowed paths, tended the hedges with an almost reverent care. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, sensing that Finch's knowledge of the maze might unlock a piece of the puzzle surrounding Sophie's murder and Clara Vane's attack. Poirot found Finch near the maze's entrance, pruning a yew with precise snips. The air carried the sharp scent of cut greenery, mingling with the damp earth. "Monsieur Finch," Poirot called, his voice clear but gentle. "A moment, s'il vous plaît. I am Hercule Poirot, and I seek the truth about Mademoiselle Dale's death." Finch paused, his shears glinting in the fading light. He turned, his face lined like old parchment, his eyes wary. "I know who you are, sir," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Heard about the murder? Terrible business. But I'm just a gardener. What would I know?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "You know the maze, monsieur, as few others do. Its paths, its secrets. Mademoiselle Dale, she walked here often, oui? What did she seek?" Finch resumed pruning, his movements deliberate. "She was always about, that one. Sketching the hedges, asking questions. Wanted to know how the maze was built, why it twists. So, said it was for a project, but I reckon she was after something else." "Something else?" Poirot pressed, stepping closer. "The maze hides a chamber, Monsieur Finch, with relics of a Brotherhood of the Crescent. Did she speak of this?" Finch's shears faltered, a leaf falling to the ground. "Brotherhood? Old tales, sir. My grandfather spoke of such things. Rituals under the moon, secrets buried deep. I told Miss Sophie the maze don't like being pried into. It's got a mind of its own." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A mind, you say? Or a design? I found a passage beneath the fountain where Sophie died. You, who tend these grounds, did you know of it?" Finch's gaze flicked to the maze, then back. "Heard rumours, sir, but never saw it. My job's the hedges, not what's under 'em. Miss Sophie, she asked about hidden paths once. I warned her, stay out at night and the maze'll turn on you." "Turn on her," Poirot repeated, his voice soft but probing. "And yet she died there, under the moonlight. Did you see her that night, monsieur?" Finch shook his head, his hand steadying. "I was in my cottage, sir, half a mile off. Heard the scream, though, carried on the wind. By the time I got to the maze, you lot were there, with her body." His voice cracked, and Poirot noted a faint tremor, not of guilt, but of unease. "And Mademoiselle Vane's attack?" Poirot asked. "The note, 'The moon sees all,' was found near her. You know the maze's paths. Could someone move unseen?" Finch's eyes darkened. The maze plays tricks, sir. Moonlight bends the paths, makes you see what ain't there. A man who knows the turns could slip through, quiet as a shadow." He hesitated, then added, "Found something odd that night, near the fountain. Bit of metal, like a key, half buried in the dirt. Gave it to Mr. Grayson to pass on." Poirot's heart quickened. "A key? Describe it, monsieur." "Small, brass, with a crescent moon on the head," Finch said. "Thought it was junk, but it looked old, like the manor's relics." "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his mind racing to the locked box in the hidden chamber. "This key, it may unlock more than you know. Monsieur Grayson, he has it." Finch nodded. "Told him to give it to the constable, but I don't know if he did." Poirot filed this away, his gaze sweeping the maze. The hedges loomed, their shadows lengthening as the sun dipped. Finch's tale, cryptic yet revealing, suggested Sophie had been close to uncovering the maze's secrets. Perhaps the Brotherhood's treasure. The key, if it matched the box, could be pivotal. "Thank you, Monsieur Finch," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "You have been most illuminating. The maze, it speaks through you." Finch grunted, returning to his pruning. "Mind yourself, sir. The maze don't take kindly to those who dig too deep." Poirot returned to the manor, his thoughts on the key, the chamber, and the crescent moon motif. He sought out Grayson in the butler's pantry, finding him polishing silver with nervous energy. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said. "A key, brass with a crescent moon. Monsieur Finch gave it to you. Where is it?" Grayson's hands froze. "Key? Oh, yes, I gave it to Constable Harris, sir, for evidence." But his eyes avoided Poirot's, and a faint flush crept up his neck. "Vraiment?" Poirot said, his tone mild but piercing. "We shall see." He resolved to confirm with Harris, suspecting. Grayson's unease hid more than forgetfulness. As he stepped into the hall, the maze visible through the windows, Poirot felt the weight of its secrets. The key, the chamber, Sophie's journal, each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit. The gardener's tale had given him a new piece, but the killer, like the maze's shadows, remained elusive. Chapter 10. A dance of suspects. The moon rose over Moonlit Manor, casting its silver veil across the maze, its hedges looming like silent sentinels. Hercule Poirot stood at the labyrinth's entrance, his silhouette sharp against the twilight, his little grey cells orchestrating a bold gambit. The murder of Sophie Dale, Clara Vane's attack, and the maze's hidden chamber had woven a web of secrets, and the gardener's tale of a brass key with a crescent moon had tightened the net. To unravel the truth, Poirot had devised a reenactment of the gala's fatal night, forcing the guests to retrace their steps in the maze under his watchful eye. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot announced, his voice carrying over the gathered guests. "Tonight, we recreate the moments before Mademoiselle Dale's death. You will enter the maze as you did then, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall observe. The truth, it hides in your movements." The guests assembled on the terrace exchanged uneasy glances. Lord Ashford's face was drawn, his sister, Lady Beatrice, clutching her shawl tightly. Dr. Mortimer Crane gripped his notebook, his green-stained fingers twitching. Clara Vane, her temple still bandaged, looked pale but resolute. Captain Lionel Hurst stood rigid, his wife Eleanor fidgeting with her repaired pearl necklace, while Julian Trent's cool gaze betrayed a flicker of unease. Constable Harris, flanked by 2 deputies, nodded gruffly, approving Poirot's plan but ready to intervene. "The maze," Poirot continued, "its paths and moonlight deceive. But tonight we strip away illusions. Begin, s'il vous plaît." Reluctantly, the guests dispersed into the maze, their torches casting wavering beams. Poirot followed, his own torch dimmed, his eyes sharp as he noted their paths. Lord Ashford and Lady Beatrice entered together, their steps hesitant, pausing near the entrance as they claimed before. Crane veered left, muttering about Flora, his torch lingering on a yew branch. Clara moved alone, her shawl catching on a hedge, her pace uneven. Hurst and Eleanor stayed close, their whispers tense, while Trent lingered near the entrance, lighting a cigarette, its silver case glinting. The maze's paths twisted, the moonlight creating false turns and shifting shadows. Poirot, mapping their movements, sensed discrepancies. Lady Beatrice's claim of staying near the entrance faltered as she ventured deeper, her torch flickering. Crane's study seemed aimless, his eyes darting to the fountain's direction. Clara's path mirrored her story of being lost, but her glances backward suggested fear or guilt. A shout broke the silence, sharp and accusing. Poirot hurried toward the maze's heart, where the fountain gleamed. Captain Hurst stood over a patch of grass, his face red. "This proves it!" he bellowed, pointing at Julian Trent, who stood nearby, his cigarette discarded. "I saw him drop this." Hurst held up a blood-stained handkerchief, its white linen marred with dark red. Trent's eyes narrowed. "Nonsense, I've never seen that before. You're trying to pin this on me." Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Silence, messieurs. Constable Harris, secure the handkerchief." Harris took it, bagging it as evidence. Poirot examined it through the plastic, noting a faint monogram. J.T. "Monsieur Trent," he said, "this bears your initials. Explain." Trent's composure wavered. "Anyone could have taken it from my room. I'm being framed." Dieu! Voice rose, and Eleanor Hurst flinched, her hand clutching her necklace. Clara, trembling, spoke up. "I saw someone near the fountain that night. A shadow. Could it have been her?" She trailed off, her eyes on Trent, then Hurst. Lady Beatrice snapped, "This is madness. We're all suspects turning on each other." Her brother gripped her arm, his face pale, while Crane muttered about leaving the maze. Poirot raised a hand. "Calm, mes amis. The handkerchief, it is a clue, but not the whole truth. Let us continue." He directed the guests to retrace their paths, noting their reactions. Hurst's aggression, Trent's defensiveness, and Clara's fear suggested hidden motives. The moonlight, playing tricks on the hedges, mirrored the deception in their words. As they reached the maze's centre again, Poirot paused by the fountain, recalling the hidden passage beneath. The brass key, mentioned by Finch, remained unaccounted for. Grayson's claim of giving it to Harris was unconfirmed. Poirot's eyes swept the grass, spotting a glint half buried in the dirt. He knelt, retrieving a small tarnished button, its crescent moon design matching the medallion from the chamber. Mon Dieu, he murmured, pocketing it. Another thread in the tapestry. He turned to the guests, their faces illuminated by torchlight, each a mask of secrets. The maze, it watches, as does Hercule Poirot. Your steps tonight, they betray you. Harris, growing impatient, ordered the guests back to the manor. As they filed out, Poirot lingered, his gaze on the fountain. The handkerchief, the button, the key, they pointed to a killer familiar with the maze's secrets, perhaps tied to the Brotherhood of the Crescent. Sophie's journal, still missing, loomed large in his thoughts. The dance, Poirot whispered to the empty maze. It reveals the steps of the guilty. I am close, mon ami. The moonlight flickered, as if in agreement or defiance. Chapter 11. The Moon's Final Secret. The moon hung high above Moonlit Manor, its silver light bathing the maze in an ethereal glow, as if mocking the secrets it guarded. Hercule Poirot stood in the maze's heart, beside the marble fountain where Sophie Dale had met her end. The reenactment had stirred the guests' fears, unearthing a blood-stained handkerchief and a crescent moon button. Yet the killer remained, a shadow. Poirot's little grey cells burned with purpose, driven by the gardener's tale of a brass key, the hidden chamber's relics, and the cryptic note, "The moon sees all." Tonight he would unravel the maze's final secret. Poirot held the faded map from the manor's archives, its lines tracing the labyrinth's twists. The notation, "Follow the moon's path to the heart," had haunted him. He studied the map under his torch, noting a subtle pattern. Certain paths aligned with the lunar phases, marked by faint crescent symbols. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the maze, it is a riddle, solved by moonlight." He traced the paths, moving with precision, his polished shoes silent on the damp grass. The moonlight shifted, revealing a hidden alignment, a path that under the full moon's angle led to a low stone marker near the fountain. Kneeling, Poirot brushed away dirt, uncovering an engraved crescent moon, its edges worn but deliberate. He pressed it, and a soft click echoed. A nearby hedge parted slightly, revealing a narrow slit in the earth, a second entrance to the underground chamber. "C'est formidable," Poirot whispered, descending once more into the damp, stone-lined chamber. The relics remained. The Taig medallion, the letters, the locked box. But now his torch caught a new detail, a faded inscription on the wall. "By the moon's grace, the truth is kept. Betray the crescent, and death is met." Sophie, he realized, had found this place, her curiosity drawing her to a truth someone killed to protect. Poirot's thoughts turned to the brass key Finch had mentioned, supposedly given to Constable Harris by Grayson. Harris, however, had no record of it. Grayson's unease, his dusty cuff, suggested deception. The key, Poirot suspected, fit the locked box, which might hold the Brotherhood's final secret. A treasure or a scandal. He emerged from the chamber, the moonlight now a guide rather than a deceiver. As he reached the fountain, a rustle startled him. A figure darted from the shadows, Julian Trent, his silver cigarette case glinting. "Monsieur Poirot!" Trent exclaimed, his cool facade cracking. "What are you doing here?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "I might ask you the same, monsieur. The maze, it calls to those with secrets. What brings you back?" Trent hesitated. "I couldn't sleep. I thought the maze might clear my mind." But his hand trembled, and Poirot noted a fresh scratch on his wrist, as if from a hedge. Before Poirot could press, a scream pierced the night. Not Clara's this time, but Lady Beatrice, stumbling into the clearing, her shawl torn. "Someone pushed me," she gasped, her face pale. "In the maze, a shadow." Poirot steadied her, his mind racing. "Madam, describe this shadow." "I didn't see clearly," she stammered. "Tall, swift, gone before I could turn." Her eyes flicked to Trent, then away. Poirot's gaze hardened. "Monsieur Trent, you were here. Did you see this assailant?" Trent shook his head. "I heard nothing until her scream. I was just walking." The air grew tense, the moonlight casting their shadows like accusations. Poirot's mind connected the dots. Sophie's journal, her argument overheard by Grayson, the medallion Eleanor had seen, the handkerchief with Trent's initials, and now this second attack. The maze's riddle had led him to the chamber, but the motive lay in a scandal, buried by the Brotherhood. "Madame, monsieur," Poirot said, his voice low, "the maze reveals its truth. Sophie found this chamber, this inscription. She uncovered a scandal, perhaps a betrayal within the Brotherhood, tied to the Ashford legacy. Someone killed to silence her." Lady Beatrice's hand flew to her mouth. "A scandal! What nonsense! Our family has no such secrets." Trent's eyes darkened. "You're grasping, Poirot. Sophie was a nobody, poking into things she didn't understand." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A nobody, monsieur. Yet she died, and you stand here scratched and nervous. The moon, it sees all." He produced the crescent moon button, its glint matching Trent's cigarette case. "This found near the fountain. Yours, perhaps." Trent paled. "I've never seen it. You're trying to frame me, like that handkerchief." Poirot raised a hand. "Calm, monsieur. The truth, it emerges. The key to the box, it is missing. But I shall find it, and the killer." As Constable Harris arrived, alerted by the scream, Poirot escorted Lady Beatrice and Trent back to the manor. The maze's paths seemed to whisper, their secrets unravelling. Sophie's death, Clara's attack, and now this incident pointed to a motive rooted in a betrayal, perhaps financial, perhaps personal, guarded by the Brotherhood. The key, Poirot knew, would unlock the final piece. In the manor's hall, the guests gathered, their faces a gallery of fear and suspicion. Poirot's eyes met Grayson's, noting his absence during the incident. The dance of suspects, he thought. It nears its end. The moon has spoken, and Hercule Poirot listens. Chapter 12. The net tightens the drawing-room of Moonlit Manor was a crucible of tension, its chandeliers casting a dim glow over the assembled guests, their faces etched with dread. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his small frame commanding, as he prepared to weave the threads of evidence into a tapestry of truth. Sophie Dale's murder, Clara Vane's attack, the hidden chamber and the maze's riddles had led to this moment. The brass key, the crescent moon medallion, the blood-stained handkerchief, and the cryptic inscription, "By the moon's grace, the truth is kept. Betray the crescent, and death is met," pointed to a killer among them. Poirot's little grey cells, relentless and precise, were ready to expose the guilty. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the silence, "the maze has spoken, and its secrets are no longer hidden. Mademoiselle Dale died because she uncovered a truth guarded by the Brotherhood of the Crescent, a scandal buried for centuries. Tonight, Hercule Poirot names her killer." The guests froze. Lord Ashford gripped his chair, his face pale. "Unsolved," Beatrice's eyes darted, her hands clenched. Dr. Mortimer Crane clutched his notebook, his fingers trembling. Clara Vane, bandaged but alert, stared at the floor. Captain Lionel Hurst stood rigid, his wife Eleanor twisting her necklace, while Julian Trent's cool facade wavered. Mr. Grayson, the butler, lingered by the door, his expression guarded. Poirot paced his polished shoes silent on the rug. "Let us review." Sophie, curious and bold, explored the maze, found its hidden chamber, and learned of the Brotherhood, a society sworn to protect a secret. She died at the fountain, her throat cut, a pearl earring missing, a mud smear and blue fabric nearby. Mademoiselle Vane was attacked, a note warning her to stop searching. A blood-stained handkerchief, marked JT, and a crescent moon button were found, as was a brass key, described by Monsieur Finch but missing. He turned to Grayson. "Monsieur Grayson, you claimed to give this key to Constable Harris, yet he has no record of it. Why?" Grayson flushed. "I must have misplaced it, sir. It was chaos after the murder." His eyes avoided Poirot's, and a murmur rippled through the room. Poirot produced the crescent moon medallion. "This, from the chamber, tied Sophie to the Brotherhood's secret. Madame Hurst, you saw her with it. Why did you not speak sooner?" Eleanor's necklace snapped again, pearls scattering. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Sophie said it was a keepsake, but I didn't know what it meant." Hurst glared at her. "Keep quiet, Eleanor." But Poirot noted his clenched fists, recalling the monogrammed glove from the maze. Poirot faced Trent. "Monsieur Trent, the handkerchief bears your initials. You were seen near the fountain, scratched by hedges. Did Sophie threaten your financial empire?" Trent's voice was cold. "I told you, I'm being framed. That handkerchief isn't mine, and I never touched Sophie." But his hand brushed his cigarette case, its glint echoing the maze's moonlight. Poirot turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle Vane, you found Sophie, your shawl torn, your story of being lost inconsistent. The note, 'The moon sees all,' suggested you knew too much. What did you see?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I saw a shadow. I swear. I didn't kill her. I was attacked too." Her voice broke, but Poirot noted her trembling hands, as if hiding something. He addressed Crane. "Doctor, your notebook, your presence in the maze at midnight. Did Sophie discover something in your research? Perhaps tied to the Brotherhood's treasure?" Crane sputtered. "My work is plants, not secrets. I'm no killer." But his leaf-stained cuff betrayed his maze wanderings. Poirot paused before Lady Beatrice. "Madame, your muddy shoes, your denial of the Brotherhood. Yet Sophie was family. Did her curiosity threaten the Ashford legacy?" Lady Beatrice's face hardened. "You're absurd, Poirot. I loved Sophie." But her eyes flicked to her brother, and Poirot sensed a deeper fear. He stopped, his voice rising. "The maze's riddle. Its crescent moon paths led to the chamber. The inscription warned of death for betrayal. Sophie found a scandal, a financial deceit hidden by the Brotherhood tied to the Ashford fortune. One of you killed to protect it. A gasp escaped Eleanor. Financial deceit, she whispered, her eyes on Trent. Poirot's gaze locked on Trent. Monsieur Trent, your empire rests on the Ashford estate's investments. Sophie's journal, still missing, revealed your manipulation of their funds, a betrayal of the Brotherhood's vow. You killed her, then attacked Mademoiselle Vane to silence her suspicions. Trent laughed, but it was hollow. Preposterous! You have no proof. Poirot produced the brass key, retrieved from Grayson's quarters after a discreet search. This, found hidden in your pantry, Monsieur Grayson, fits the chamber's box. It contains documents proving Trent's embezzlement. You, Monsieur Trent, dropped the handkerchief, your button, and scratched your wrist fleeing the scene. Trent lunged forward, but Harris restrained him. "Lies!" he shouted, but the room's silence condemned him. Poirot turned to the others. The maze's moonlight deceived, but Hercule Poirot does not. The net is tightened, the truth revealed. Chapter 13. Dawn over the maze. The first light of dawn crept over Moonlit Manor, its golden rays piercing the mist that clung to the maze's dark hedges. In the drawing-room, Hercule Poirot stood before the assembled guests, his small frame radiating authority, his moustache immaculate despite the long night. The revelation of Julian Trent as Sophie Dale's killer had left the room in stunned silence, but questions lingered. The maze's secrets, the hidden chamber, the Brotherhood of the Crescent, the brass key, demanded a full accounting. Poirot's little grey cells, having unravelled the puzzle, were ready to lay bare the truth. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice steady and resonant. The murder of Mademoiselle Sophie Dale was no act of passion, but a calculated crime to protect a secret. Allow Hercule Poirot to explain, step by step, how the maze and its moonlight revealed the guilty. The guests sat rigid. Lord Ashford, his face etched with relief and sorrow. Lady Beatrice, her eyes red-rimmed. Dr. Mortimer Crane clutching his notebook. Clara Vane, her bandage a stark reminder of her ordeal. Captain Lionel Hurst and Eleanor, their tension eased, and Mr. Grayson, the butler, standing stiffly by the door. Constable Harris, guarding the now handcuffed Trent, nodded for Poirot to proceed. Poirot paced, his polished shoes gleaming. Mademoiselle Dale, curious and bold, uncovered a scandal hidden by the Brotherhood of the Crescent, a society founded by Sir Edmund Ashford. The chamber beneath the fountain held relics, letters, a medallion, a locked box, revealing a financial deceit. Monsieur Trent, a financier, had manipulated the Ashford estate's investments, siphoning funds for years, betraying the Brotherhood's vow of loyalty. He held up the brass key, its crescent moon glinting. This key, hidden by Monsieur Grayson, opened the box, which contained documents proving Trent's embezzlement. Sophie, in her walks through the maze, found the chamber and the box. Her journal, which I recovered from Trent's room, detailed her suspicions. She confronted him, and he killed her to silence her. Trent, his cool facade shattered, sneered. "You've no proof, Poirot. Those documents mean nothing without context." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Context, monsieur. The blood-stained handkerchief, with your initials dropped in haste, the crescent moon button torn from your coat in the maze, the scratch on your wrist from the hedges as you fled. These are no coincidences. The mud smear on the fountain where you leaned to strike, and the missing pearl earring caught in your struggle with Sophie, all point to you. He turned to Clara. Mademoiselle Vane, you saw a shadow, Trent's, near the fountain. Your attack was his attempt to silence your suspicions, prompted by your talks with Sophie about the maze. The note, "The moon sees all," was his warning, written in panic. Clara nodded, her voice soft. I suspected something, but I didn't know what. Sophie was so secretive. Poirot faced Grayson. Monsieur Grayson, you overheard Sophie's argument with Trent. You found the key near the fountain, dropped by Trent, but hid it, fearing exposure of your own minor role in the estate's finances. A mistake, but not murder. Grayson hung his head. I meant no harm, sir. I thought it would protect the family. Poirot continued, addressing the group. The maze's design, its crescent moon paths, led Sophie to the chamber. The inscription, "Betray the crescent and death is met," was a warning Trent heeded. His greed, his fear of ruin, drove him to kill. The medallion, seen by Madame Hurst, was Sophie's keepsake, a clue to her discovery. The glove, the fabric, the mud, all were threads in the tapestry of his guilt. Lady Beatrice whispered, "But the Ashford legacy, is it ruined?" Poirot's gaze softened. "No, Madame. The scandal is exposed, but your family endures. The maze's secrets, they are no longer deadly." Harris stepped forward. "Trent's under arrest. We'll take it from here, Poirot." Trent, defiant, was led away, his protests echoing down. The hall. Poirot crossed to the window, where dawn's light illuminated the maze. The moonlight, he mused, it deceives, but the dawn reveals. The maze, it is a mirror of human nature, twisted yet solvable. Lord Ashford approached, his voice heavy. "Monsieur Poirot, you've saved us from ruin, but Sophie, we failed her." Poirot bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle Dale sought truth, monsieur. In her honour we have found it. Justice, it is served." As the guests dispersed, their relief palpable, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the maze. Its hedges now, golden in the dawn, seemed less menacing, yet their mysteries lingered. The Brotherhood's treasure, if it existed, remained unclaimed, perhaps a puzzle for another day. For now, Poirot felt the satisfaction of order restored, his mind at peace. He stepped onto the terrace, the air fresh with morning dew. "The human heart," he murmured, "it is the true labyrinth. But Hercule Poirot, he navigates even its darkest paths." With a final glance at the maze, he turned toward the manor, ready to depart. The case closed, but its echoes enduring.